Hello there, welcome to Learning English is Fun with me, Teacher Fidelis. I want to look at this question. I see many people have requested for it, and this is an essay using Fathers of Nations on how citizens suffer in most African countries. So I will try and give a few questions that have the same meaning, and then we look at how you can answer them. So you can consider a question such as, citizens in African countries suffer due to the ineffectiveness of their leaders. Or you could say, there's poor leadership in Africa, thus citizens suffer. Like, the question can be phrased in whatever way, but the question is, how do we see people suffering, or Africans, citizens suffering because of their leaders? So citizens suffer due to inefficient leadership. Write an essay to validate this statement using the novel Fathers of Nations. So the first thing you do, look at the key areas in the question, or the key words in the question, paraphrase them. You can have a general introduction, or you can have a contextualized one, but ensure that you're answering the question. So citizens suffer due to ineffectiveness of their leaders, or where we have, ineffective leadership, citizens. Which other words can you use that give the same meaning as that keyword? People of a certain country go through hard times or face hardships due to bad leadership. People of a particular country go through hardships due to bad leadership. That's a good paraphrase. Then, if you want to go the contextualized way, then you can use that paraphrase, then add, using the novel Fathers of Nations by Paul B. Vita, this assertion can be validated. So you can validate this, yes. So remember, again, you need to have four episodes or 4 paragraphs. So choose which areas of the book you want to use to talk about these 4 episodes. Remember, you must have 4 paragraphs. These 4 paragraphs must have areas that answer the question. How do these citizens suffer, and how do you showcase the poor leadership, the bad governance? Yeah. So you can pick different characters, and if you look at the previous videos, we have discussed how you can pick different characters in the book to discuss most of these questions. So if it's a question on poor leadership, or how citizens suffer, we have looked at Professor Karanja Kimani, Melusi, how Gukurahundi affects him, Pastor Chineke Chiamaka. Look at all those examples and pick them and coin them into one essay. So for a start, we can use Professor Karanja Kimani. How does he suffer? He suffers because of what happens in his country. The poor leadership in his country results in him suffering. How does he suffer? Professor Karanja Kimani works as a professor at the University of Nairobi. Once you give the background information, talk about him talking to Tuni and telling Tuni that before, before the present time that they were talking, the professionals used to earn 100 times more than the MPs, the member of parliament. But at this particular time then, the members of parliament use their power to pass laws that give them more money, and they also avoid taxation. Professor Karanja Kimani has an old Toyota car, an old dying Toyota car. He's unable to fix it because he does not have money. His wife, Asia, decides to leave him, and she tells him that she's going to get married to newborn Walomu. This is a member of parliament who earns more money. He has 4 cars. He has 3 wives, and she would be the 4th one because he has money, and that is all she cared about. So Karanja Kimani loses his wife to newborn Walomu, but he does not take this sitting down. He fights him. He goes to the office, a scuffle ensues, and newborn Walomu is not even afraid of talking about why he's stealing the wife. And then he says, don't talk about stealing. And then he goes ahead and gives wife stealing statistics. To him, he was just taking Karanja Kimani's wife because he could or because he can. And then he tells Professor Karanja that yes, all this gold, because you see Asia is old, and Karanja Kimani asks newborn Walum, what do you want to take my old wife? And he says, old is gold, and a bull dies with green grass in its mouth. So a fight occurs. Professor Karanja Kimani is arrested, jailed for 6 months, and then he's demoted for embarrassing the university. So he suffers. He loses his daughter, loses his wife, his job, just because of the failure to get enough money. If he had enough money, then his life would be different. Paragraph 2, you can talk about Pastor Chineke Chiamaka. How does he suffer? This is a person who preaches. Remember, he's a pastor in which church? Church inside Africa. And at one point, Chineke Chiamaka talks about what the government was doing about what had happened in a few cities in Nigeria. And he goes to church to preach about it, and he asks them, how can a government write a memo saying that the government is advising? How can a government advise itself? He does not take this. And he says there are fights erupting in different cities. And instead of the government handling this, then the government decides to write a memo. Once he gives that someone, the next day he's picked by the police. He is arrested. In fact, you can add this information that he's arrested and taken into a rat-infested cell. And then after that, he's banned from ever preaching. So why is this happening to him? Why is he being arrested? Because he just decides to speak against the government, or he decides to speak against something that the government does not want. So again, that is a citizen who suffers as a result of his government. You can talk about Comrade Melusi. Comrade Melusi suffers a lot. Number one, talk about him losing his wife. Why does he lose his wife? He was fighting Smith side by side with the bomber. The bomber is the president of Zimbabwe at that particular time. And he promises him that once he gets into power, he would make Melusi the prime minister. But when he gets into power, he realizes that they don't belong to the same tribe. And Melusi's tribe becomes a tribe that is anti-government. And so this president, the bomber, uses that as a reason to punish Melusi. There's this group called Gokurahundi. Gokurahundi is sent out. It goes to clear chaff. And you know, chaff in this case, these are people. They are killed. And a person who is important to Melusi dies, and this is Ziliza. Ziliza was killed, and she was just left on the floor. And when Melusi goes home looking for his wife, he finds her dead. So talk about that emotional turmoil that Melusi goes through because of the bomber. And lastly, you can talk about Mrambatsvina, still on Zimbabwe. You can talk about how the president comes up. You can talk about how the president comes up with this group that is supposed to help eradicate poverty, crime, disease. But in any case, what does it do? It moves to the slums, eradicating the people. The bulldozers are sent out. The people are not given any warning, and they didn't even care where these people would go. So they just sent out bulldozers that went out and cleared the slums. So you can give that as another example. And maybe as an addition, you can talk about Mrambat's Vina just bringing agony and pain to the people of, or the citizens of Zimbabwe. They suffer a lot, but this suffering is caused by the leader. He says, oh, I'm bringing this to help you. But in any case, he takes away their livelihood. As usual, have a topic sentence, have a clincher, and the last bit of your writing should be, it should be the what? The conclusion. In the conclusion then, write in conclusion, sum up, to summarize and stuff like that. Don't add any new information and you'll be good to go. In the other previous episodes, we have discussed other questions such as choices have consequences. Another question that we have looked at, sometimes you make a decision that make things worse. You make a decision that make things worse. You can look at some of the questions that I have looked at in the previous episodes and see whether you can answer questions. We have other many questions that you can try and use for revision purposes. Some questions are very specific, especially maybe you can get a question on Melusi or maybe citizens of Zimbabwe. You can get a question on Professor Karanja Kimani and how he suffers. You can get a question on how, if we make decisions without thinking, how we get or how we end up in problems. If we make decisions without thinking about the outcome, it can land us into more trouble. Those are some of the questions that you can answer. And finally, go and listen in the episodes where we have looked at those path travelers, because if you understand something about Saif Tahir, Professor Karanja Kimani, Pastor Chineke Chiamaka and other characters, then you can evidently write the essays, because what we need is information. And remember to use present tense. Don't narrate the story, and don't give your answers in past tense. Just explain, write as if you're talking to someone. And if you do that, you'll be good to go. And so make sure that you watch out for the next episode. We shall be looking at other essays, but using the short stories. That is Incident in the Park and Ninema. Until next time, it's a goodbye from me. Ensure that you subscribe. Bye.